Yo, yo, yo. Here we go. Practical Purpose Podcast. We here, we live. Everybody's here. I see people. I see the Crystal G, Pecan Tan. We all here. I'm excited to share what I have with you on time management. Mr. Skinny, I see you. Mr. Skinny TV. Y'all got to check him out. He got the beard juice. You got to get the beard juice, Mr. Skinny. Hey, listen, I want you to do something for me right now. Share. I don't care if you're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube right now. Share, because there's someone out there now who needs to hear something about time management. Listen, there's somebody that you know, one of your best friends, one of your closest friends, one of your siblings, somebody who needs to get a biblical perspective on time management. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Practical Purpose Podcast is looking at life principles from a biblical perspective. So you don't have to necessarily be a believer or believe in the Bible to get something from this, because they are life principles that we're going to extract from the Bible to learn about how we can be better people, right? How we can be better people. So I want you to share, take the link, text it to somebody. We're going to give them a few minutes to get in, but we want to share this with as many people as we possibly can, because there are so many people right now who are struggling to manage their time. And they're struggling to manage their time because they don't understand how important it is for them to manage their time. All right. They don't understand how important it is for them to manage their time. And so you have to be in a place, you have to be locked in to time management if you want to understand how to be the most productive person and the most productive self that you can possibly be, right? So we're going to look at time management today. For the next few moments, we're going to look at how you can properly manage your time. We're going to look at the importance of time and how we measure it and what that means for us in productivity and in efficiency, right? And so we're going to look at time management today. We're going to look at a few pieces of scripture, not a whole lot, but we just want to talk about the importance of time. All right. So if you're ready for it, if you're in the chat, I want you to put "let's go" in the chat, because we're going to talk about time management, and you got to plug in, you got to lock in, share this with somebody so that we can get it in and we can learn something that we might not have known before. All right, so let's talk about time management. Let's talk about time. And what is time, right? So in order for you to be able to fully tap into how to manage your time, you've got to understand the importance of time, right? And time is something that's created, right? We know that God created time. Now, we can't find specifically a scripture that says that God created time, but we know that God created a mechanism and means by which we measure time, right? He created seasons, he created day and night, right? And because he did that, that is how we measure time. right? We measure time based off of the seasons of the year, based off of the days, based off of night and day. So time is something that's measurable, and time is something that was created by God, right? And time, watch this, time is the most common gift that God ever gave us. Everybody has it. Everybody went from eternity to time, right? Everybody went from eternity. God pulled us out of eternity into time. And so time is the most common gift that God has given us. All of us have it. All of us operate within it, right? And we don't fully understand how time works because the idea of infinity is just something that we can't properly comprehend. To understand that God is from everlasting to everlasting is something that we can't comprehend. We can't comprehend the idea that God has always been and will always be. And so it's difficult sometimes for us to understand time, right? But time is the most common gift from God. All of us have been placed in this sphere of time, and we measure our life by time. But here's one thing you have to understand is that because of that, if you find someone that is reckless with time, you found someone that is reckless with their life. Y'all act like y'all didn't hear what I just said. If you find someone that is reckless with time, you find someone that is also reckless with their life. People who have reckless lifestyles do not understand how to manage time. They don't understand the importance of time, nor do they understand why time is something that we are going to be held accountable for. And I'm going to talk about that very shortly. But two things that only can be restored by God is time and life. Let me say that again. Two things that can only be restored by God is time and life. I don't care how much sleep you miss, you can't make up for it. When you lose an hour, you've lost it. You can't get it back. Only God can restore time, and only God can restore life. So listen, if you can't restore it, then it must be something that we have to value and treasure at all times. It must be something that we must hold in high regard because we can never get it back. Listen, God, it's a powerful scripture in the Old Testament where God is speaking to the children of Israel. And he says this, he says, listen, I'm restoring the years to you. He's restoring years. God is restoring time. That's something that you cannot do yourself. And so if time is something only God can restore, then that also means that you have to value it at a high level, right? If time is something only God can restore, you have to value it at a high level. So if you find someone who is reckless with their time, they're also reckless with their life. All right. And so when you look at that component or that concept, you also have to understand too that you can't put a monetary value on your time. Time is not money. I know we say that. I know Rick Ross says that time is money, mine is funny, right? But time is not money. Time is life. Let me say that again. Time is not money. Time is life. And if you place a monetary value on your time, then you don't hold your time in the highest regard. Now, we live in a system that places monetary value on your time, right? When you work a job, you get paid by the hour. They're saying that your time is worth this amount of money. But time is not money. Time is life. When you devote your time to something, what are you doing? You're giving your life to it, right? So the next time your phone rings, the question you need to ask is my life worth the time of this conversation? When you get that text message the next time, you need to ask yourself, is my life worth this conversation? Time is not money. Time is life. I see you, Keisha. I see you. Time is not money. It's life. right? And so when you understand that concept, that time is life and you don't have an infinite amount of time, then you have to make sure that you're stewarding and managing your time well. Listen, we've established that time is the most common gift of God. But let me say this to you. Whenever God gifts us with something, right? Whenever he blesses us with something, we have a level of accountability that comes with it. There is a level of responsibility that comes with being blessed with something, right? And so the most common gift from God is time. But watch this, God doesn't gift us with what he doesn't give us the potential to steward. He doesn't gift us with anything that he does not also give us the potential to steward. And so when you're gifted with a gift or a talent, your job is to steward that gift or talent well, right? And you wouldn't be given that gift or talent if you didn't have the propensity or the potential to steward it well, right? Y'all don't believe me. So if you look in scripture where the master gave the talents or money to his servants, he also said that he gave it to them based off of their ability to do something with it, right? So whenever you're gifted with something, you're gifted with it, and it also has the potential. You have the potential to steward it, whatever it is, right? So your time is the same way. If everybody has this common gift of time, then God has also given everybody the ability to steward and manage that time well. All right. He also gives us the ability to steward and manage that time well. Listen, Keisha says, can he trust us with what he gives us? Right. And so the time that we have has to be managed and steward well. So we're going to talk about one question today, right? This is not about tips on how to manage your time well. If you want tips and some strategies on how to manage your time differently, go to the Moment of Clarity on YouTube, and you'll find some videos on time management, which is some gifts or some tricks to help you manage time well. But today we're going to ask the question, why do we need to manage our time? Why do we need to manage our time? Right. And so I'm going to give you two reasons why we need to manage our time. And I'm going to give you the greatest um, tip to managing your time. There's only one thing. It's not a 12-step program. I'm going to give you one thing that you need to do every day to help you manage your time well. Listen to this. Why do we need to manage our time? Here's the first reason. We will be held accountable for how we manage our time. Right. We already established that time is a gift from God. We already established that when you're giving a gift, blessed with something, then you're also blessed with the responsibility and accountability that comes along with it. But if you're given time, then the reason you need to manage it well is because one day you're going to be held accountable for how you manage that time. Listen, Paul says in Romans 14, he says, so then each of us will give an account of himself to God. So you're going to be accountable for how you manage your time, right? You're going to be accountable for that. And you have to understand the value in time, because you will not properly manage what you don't place value on. Let me say that again. You will not properly manage what you do not place value on. Right? When you get that brand new car and you're paying those $800 car payments, you're going to properly manage that car because there's a value that you place on it. Right? When you buy that house, you're going to properly clean it. You're going to properly keep up the maintenance on that house because you place a value on it. But how often do we not place the proper value on our time? Right? And we give our time to people, places, and things that we do not properly place the right value on. Right? And so you have to make sure that you manage your time well, because you have to have the proper value on it. Listen, what you are, what you become depends on how you use your time. The way that you manage and steward, I like the term steward, but the way that you manage and steward your time is going to determine ultimately what you are and what you're going to become. Right. Remember in that same story with the talents that was given to the three servants, he gave one 10, I think, one 5, and then one 1, I believe. Right. And the one with the 10 and the one with the 5, they multiplied what he gave them. But the one that only had one, he buried it. He didn't steward what he was given. And I like what PD says. He says that he was called wicked for not managing and stewarding what he was given well. Right. And so in the kingdom, if you don't manage and steward what you're given, in the text, you're called wicked. Right. So if you don't place the proper value on what God has entrusted to you, then you're not going to understand how to value and plan your day and make best use of your time. And we're going to look at that a little bit better, all right, and a little bit later. But time management is less about tips. It's less about tricks to be efficient, and it is more about embracing the freedom to choose. That's my main point. Time management is less about to-do lists, right? But there is value in that. And if you go to the Moment of Clarity on YouTube, you'll see I talk about the importance of to-do lists. I talk about the importance of success lists, right? I talk about how one thing that I do is I have a to-do list that's weekly and a success list that's the things that are directly tied with my goals that I do every single day. Right. And that works for me. It doesn't work for everybody. Right. But it's less about that, because a lot of times those to-do lists and those lists of things that you have to get done, right, they cause anxiety. But the real foundation of time management is not those things. It is the ability to choose. It is the freedom to choose. You choose whether or not you want to spend your time on one thing or another. Right. You choose that. And you choose it for a lot of different reasons. Here's a few reasons that determine your choices: your morals, your standards, right? Your position. If you're a mother, if you're a father, you should choose your children over some other things that you could choose, right? And you feel like you're forced to choose them, but you're not forced to choose them because you value your motherhood or your fatherhood. You choose those things over other things, right? And so your morals and standards. But watch this: your roles and responsibilities are also a reason why you make choices with how to spend your time. But this one is the most powerful one. Your purpose should determine how you spend your time. Let me say that again. Your purpose should determine how well you steward and manage your time. So it's less about tips. It's less about lists. It's less about having a checklist of things to do. And it's more about understanding how you have the ability to make choices. Right? It's about you having the ability to make choices. One thing we do is we trap ourselves a lot of times into not understanding the freedom that we really have. And we say things like, it's not enough time in the day. It is enough time in the day, right? We say things like, I just don't have enough time to do this. I don't have enough time to do that. Listen, you always have time for what you make time to do. You always have time for what you make time to do. It's that value system, right? And for many of us, we go to work 40 hours a week, 60 hours a week, because we don't, not because we value money, but we value what the money does for us, right? If you've got to feed children, you're going to need to go to work, right? So that's 8 hours out of your day that is consumed with something else. But understand that you chose to do that, right? Pam says prioritize, right? You prioritize your time based off of your roles, your responsibilities, your morals, your standards, but most importantly, your purpose. Understanding your purpose, and we're going to get to that when we get into the text that we're going to look at today. All right. And so here it is. When you are blessed with time, you don't oftentimes want to understand the freedom of choice. Why? Because with choices comes responsibility, right? You're going to have to answer for choosing one thing over the other thing. You're going to have to answer for that. Listen to this. We don't want to embrace the freedom of choice because it comes with responsibility and accountability for how we choose to manage our time. Listen, when you choose to do one thing over another, you're going to have to answer for that one day. And it's based off of your value system. It's based off of your purpose, right? And you have a bunch of different purposes. If you're a mother, some of your purpose is going to be dealing with motherhood. If you're a father, it's going to be dealing with fatherhood. If you're a grandfather, a grandmother, if you're a minister, if you are a coach, whatever it is, your purpose and your role and responsibility is directly tied to whatever your purpose is, and that's going to determine how you choose to spend your time. Listen, so that one tip that I was going to give you about spending time, if you make better choices, you will manage your time better. If you make better choices, you manage your time better. For some of us making better choices, we need to have a to-do list, right? We need to have a calendar in order to make better choices. But at the end of the day, it boils down to that. If I make better choices regarding my time, then I'm going to manage my time better. Listen, Pecan says time management is about distinguishing between what is important to and for you and what tempts you into useless activities. What tempts you into useless activities? Oftentimes, we are not, we're consumed with useless things because we don't, in that moment, take the time to pay attention to our value system and pay attention to our purpose. We want what we want in that moment. And that's why it all boils down to the freedom to choose. You have the freedom. We have this propensity or this idea in our mind to enslave ourselves. We enslave ourselves by saying things like, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough this. When in actuality, you have enough of whatever it is you need. You just don't steward it the right way. Or you choose to steward it one way, which causes you to have less time to do something else, right? And so you have the time to do whatever you make the time to do, but you have to choose the right thing based off of your purpose, based off of your value system. Listen, you can't. The second reason why you need to manage your time is this. The first reason was you're going to be held accountable for it. The second reason is you can't properly walk in purpose if you waste your time. You can't properly walk in your purpose if you waste your time. Listen, there's a scripture in the Bible that says that I think it was Solomon who says to learn about God from the days of my youth. Why? Because time is not going to wait for you to fulfill your purpose. And you can't properly walk in your purpose if you are great at squandering your time. You have to make best use of your time. And Paul says that we're going to come to that at the end, but you have to make best use of your time because you do not know how long you have to fulfill your purpose. Right? I heard a quote one time that says, if you want to find the most potential in the world, the most untapped and unused potential in the world, go to the cemetery because people have died. Millions of people have died not fulfilling their purpose because they always thought that they had tomorrow to do it. So you have to understand that time management is directly connected to accountability, choices, and your purpose. And the more you understand your purpose, the more you understand how important time is, right? Because it's not infinite, right? At one point, you're going to breathe for the last time. And if you have not fulfilled that purpose, you're going to go to the grave with untapped potential. All right. And God gives us the gift of time, but he also gives us the potential to steward it well. Listen, you can't walk in properly walk in your purpose if you waste your time. You can't do it. Listen, other point is this: time does not wait for you to find and fulfill your purpose. It doesn't wait on you to find and fulfill your purpose. Listen, I love this quote here, and it says this: life is measured by time, but the effectiveness of life is measured by purpose. Let me say that again. Life is measured by time, but the effectiveness of your life is measured by purpose. Listen, when you go to a funeral to show respect to someone, they're going to put the time that that person lived, but they don't talk about that at the funeral. They talk about the purpose that that time that that person fulfilled during that time span. So if you want to know if your life is efficient, if your life is effective, you have to look at your purpose. It doesn't matter how long you lived. What matters is, what did you do while you were on the earth? Right. And so when you go to that funeral, you don't hear people talking about spending a whole lot of time on the fact that that person lived 10 years or 100 years. You hear them talking about what they did during that time. Right. What did they do? So the effectiveness of your life is measured by your ability to fulfill your purpose. And we've established that your ability to fulfill your purpose is directly correlated with how you manage your time. Shantae says we have to clearly identify time wasters and purpose to use our time more wisely. That's my cousin right there, y'all. You have to purpose to use your time more wisely, right? You have to make a conscious choice, a conscious decision to use your time more wisely. Listen, so in the Bible, there are a few. If you Google time management scriptures in the Bible, you're going to get hundreds of scriptures, right? So I do want to look at just one text, one scripture in the Bible about how Jesus managed his time, right? Because although he was God wrapped in flesh, because he was in flesh, he still had the responsibility to manage his time. Right? He still had the responsibility, and he had the choices. There are choices that he could make in his flesh that determined why and when he managed or did certain things, right? And so in the book of John, which is one of my favorite books in the Bible, because John is not one of the synoptic gospels. It's one of the gospels that or one of the books in the Bible in which John is trying to prove to us that Jesus is not only divine, but he's also human, right? So in the book of John, in those stories that you also find in Matthew and Mark a lot of times, and Luke, you hear terms being used that talk about Jesus's feelings as a human, right? It says things like he wept, he groaned in the spirit, things like that, that lets us know that he was not only divine, but he was also 100% human. And in the book of John, chapter 11 is probably one of the most profound chapters in the Bible, because this is the chapter in which Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead, right? And this puts in motion the Pharisees and the Jews attempt to kill Jesus after he does this, right? But in the book of John, chapter 11, verse number 6, just one verse, it says, so when he heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. And I think this is an excellent lesson on time management, right? And you say, Doc, how is this a lesson on time management? I'm going to show you. It's three things, at least three things, just in this one verse here that shows us that Jesus was a master at managing time, right? And so Lazarus is his friend. This Lazarus is, John used the terminology, the one you love is dead, right? And so Jesus says, the text says that when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed 2 more days. Here's the first point about that: time management is a choice. Jesus could have chose to go right then, but he didn't, right? He didn't. He did not choose to leave when they told him that he should have left. Right. You remember? Because when he got there, eventually, some days later, Mary and Martha say, if you would have been here, he wouldn't have died. Right. So Jesus, the lesson that he gives us right here in time management is that Jesus chose to stay where he was for 2 more days. And if you don't understand that time management is about the choice that you have to choose something over something else, then you're going to totally squander to-do lists and success lists and calendars because you don't understand that you ultimately have the control over how you manage your time. So he chose not to go. All right, here's the second point in that verse, because I only got a few more minutes. Here's the second point. They're calling him to come to see about his friend. their brother, but his friends. Here's the second point. Everyone's emergency is not your immediate priority. Everyone's emergency is not your immediate priority. It was an emergency for Mary and Martha that their brother was sick and had died. It was an emergency for them, but for Jesus, it wasn't the top of his priority list. All right. And so often we don't manage our time well because we make other people's emergency our immediate priority when it shouldn't be. Right. Listen to this. If you don't manage time properly, you can't manage relationships either. Let me say that again. If you don't manage time properly, you can't manage relationships either. And when I say that, I'm not talking about just marriage relationships, or you can't manage any relationships properly if you can't manage time properly. Right. And so Jesus, who loved Lazarus, who loved Mary and Martha, still chose not to move when they told him he should have moved. All right. So if you don't manage time properly, and for some of us, that's our problem. That's our problem with our friendships. That's our problem with our marriages. That's our problem with our relationships with our parents and our siblings, is we can't manage our own time properly. So we can't even manage those relationships properly. Right. Because everybody that tells you to jump and move, you shouldn't jump and move in that time. That's one of the greatest leadership principles that I've learned being a school leader, is that just because it's an emergency for someone else doesn't mean that I need to put it at the top of my priority list in that moment. Right. And so when they tell him to come, he chooses to stay 2 more days, but he doesn't place their emergency as his immediate priority. Right. I'm sure it was important to him, but here's the reason why. Number 3, your purpose should determine when, how, and with whom you move. Your purpose should determine when, how, and with whom you move. A few verses down after verse number 6, he says to his disciples, now y'all come on, we're going to go wake them up. Right? He chose to take them with him. He didn't have to. Right? He chose to take them with him. But look at this. His purpose was to raise Lazarus from the dead, which is why he did not move when Lazarus was just sick, because he understood his purpose. And there's so much about that I don't have time to tap into, but everybody around him did not understand what his purpose was. So when he didn't immediately move at the emergency that wasn't his immediate priority, people thought he was probably crazy. This person that you love, that you care about, you didn't move when they thought that he should have moved. Listen, Jesus, as God, allowed Lazarus to die, waited to go because he knew his purpose. That one verse, John chapter 11, verse number 6, that one verse gives us all 3 of those lessons in time management. That it was a choice. that Jesus managed his time as a choice. In the Bible, there are so many different lessons on time, so many different scriptures on time management, and that's why I say time is life, because throughout the Bible you hear terminology about time. When the fullness of time had come, my Pentecostal people will say, when the day of Pentecost, Acts chapter 2 has fully come. All of those things is a reference to time. God lives outside of time, but he uses time to measure our lives, right? He uses time to measure things. So just in John 11:6, time management is a choice. It's the first lesson. Jesus made a choice. Second lesson is everyone's emergency is not your immediate priority. I think that's a major one. Everyone's emergency is not. Now, there are some people that when they need you, you move, right? If my wife need me to do something, I try to move. uh, Sometimes with your parents, if it's an emergency, you move. Sometimes with your siblings, sometimes with your children, but you have to know, you have to have that relational intelligence to know where you place certain people in your life, who you move for immediately, what situations you move for immediately, and what situations you don't. That's a part of managing and stewarding your time well. Listen, in the third lesson in John 11:6 about time management is your purpose should determine when, how, and with whom you move. Your purpose should determine when, how, and with whom you move. You can't take everybody with you to accomplish everything. Some people you've got to leave where they are, right? You can't take everybody with you, and you can't allow some people to determine how fast you move on something, right? That's time management. You can't let some people have that kind of control and power to determine how fast, how soon you move in a certain area, right? That's relational intelligence, right? And that's not really what we're talking about tonight. But if you don't manage your time well, you also can't manage your relationships well either. Listen, the reason why you need to manage your time well is because you're going to be held accountable, and you can't walk in your purpose without it. But listen to what um, Paul says in Ephesians. Listen to what Paul says. Paul says in Ephesians 5:16, and I like the ESV version of this. He says, making the best use of the time. Why? Because the days are evil. In other words, you don't know how much time you have left. You don't know what's going to happen today or tomorrow. You don't know what's going to take place. And so you have to make the best use of the time that you've been given by God, because you're going to be held accountable for that one day. I see my brother Duran in the comment section. Man, it's good to see you in here. um, you're going to be held accountable for that, right? And you have to steward your time well. Listen, last quote I'm gonna leave you with is time management is life management. Time management is life management. Again, like I said at the beginning, if you're reckless with your time, you're reckless with your life. Time management is life management. On your own time, spend some time going through the Bible. Just Google scriptures on time management, and you see how high in regard God holds our time. The gift that He's given us also the ability and the propensity to manage that very well. Listen, this is the Practical Purpose Podcast. We'll be back in another few weeks to look at another life principle from a biblical perspective. I didn't want to hold you long. I want to keep this under 45 minutes because I value my time, and I also value your time. And so if you haven't learned anything from this, or if you did learn something from this, I want you to share it. I want you to take the link and share it with as many people as you possibly can. Take the link, send it to that friend who don't know how to manage their time. Send it to some of your coworkers, right? Because it's not, again, it's not about the tip of a calendar or making to-do lists or making success lists. It's about understanding that you're going to be accountable for the choices that you make, and you choose to do one thing over another. You choose to manage your time and manage your time well. Listen, this is the Practical Purpose Podcast. I'm Dr. Williams. I'll catch you next time.